No one wants to pay for their energy bills. It's just something that they have to do to try and create an experience where customers care, B, engage, and then C, have a good experience on the back of it is obviously very difficult. In the face of adversity, I think that's when you can kind of either hide away or step up and really take a stand. And I think that's what we try to do with the customer experience and the customer focus at E.ON Next. We have one shot every month, if that, right? And that makes that one touch point the most important touch point for a customer, because that's what they're engaging with us for, to view what their bill is and how much they're being charged.
Welcome to How to Love a Customer, a podcast where we explore how brands turn strange and surprising customer moments into unforgettable experiences. In each episode, I speak with the people behind great brands who truly listen to their customers and create die-hard fans in the process. I'm your host, Mihail, the CEO and founder at Chattermill, the customer experience intelligence company. I believe in a world where every brand is fighting for attention, the ones that truly listen and adapt are the ones that win. These brands know that customer experience isn't just about support tickets and surveys. It's about understanding the human behavior at its core. If you care about building better experiences, or you just love a good "you won't believe what happened" story, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Today's guest is Abdul Khaled, Head of Digital Products at E.ON Next, helping transform the energy experience for millions of customers. And he's here to tell us about a moment where listening to the customers made all the difference. Abdul, great to have you here. Couldn't have wished for a better guest on our first episode. Before we dig into the anecdote that you brought us today, please just tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that E.ON Next is on.
Yeah, thanks, Mikhail, for having me on. Great to be here. So my name is Abdul Khaled. I look after the digital and customer experience side of things at E.ON Next. E.ON Next was born out of E.ON in the UK, really set up as a startup disruptor. And obviously we've gone way beyond the startup phase now. But the ethos was still there. How can we create something different in the industry? And it was very much predicated on customer experience. How can we be customer first? How can we create a better experience for our customers in a space which has generally and historically been a difficult one to create any meaningful customer engagement or interest? No one wants to pay for their energy bills. It's just something that they have to do. So to try and create an experience where customers care, B, engage, and then C, have a good experience on the back of it is obviously very difficult, especially through the troublesome times that we had in the onset of E.ON Next even being born as an organization, which is the pandemic, and then obviously the cost of living crisis. So chaos and a lot of trouble. But in the face of adversity, I think that's when you can kind of either hide away or step up and really take a stand. And I think that's what we try to do with the customer experience and the customer focus at E.ON Next.
For those of our listeners who don't know, E.ON is one of the largest energy companies in the whole world, right? So how do you know how this decision to create a startup within such a big entity was made in the first place? And what would you say are the reasons why it succeeded, where a lot of these initiatives, I think, fail?
So I think a lot of the energy companies in the UK, and you saw sort of just before the pandemic and then after the pandemic, you saw a lot of energy, especially small energy companies in the UK, sadly going out of business. It still sort of continued till today. A big part of that is the technology. So a lot of companies had to move to a digital transformation, and some succeeded, some didn't. So that was the first thing, is how can you be set up from a technical perspective? And the energy industry was years behind some of the other industries. I mean, banking went through it in the last decade or so. And I think energy companies have now sort of been the latest wave of that. So I think that's the first thing, that we realize that we really need to change how we operate. And a big part of that is having the strong foundations to enable better service, better experience. So I think that was the first thing. And I think the second thing was culture. To really be different in the market, you need a mindset shift. And sometimes it's easy to kind of upgrade your branding or your tech and your capabilities. But then if you have the same mindset and the same culture within the four walls of your business, it's still the same people running it, the same approach in the same way. So something drastic had to happen. And we felt that's where a new brand, a new identity, a new culture, alongside the capabilities and the technology needed to kind of really formulate. And sometimes fresh vision, fresh eyes really allows you to take that new step. And that's the journey we went on. And we went from, there was a lot of coverage. We had the fastest migration in the energy industry, where we migrated all of the customers from the old business into the new platforms. And that was a big success. And then we started to create really important proof points for us with our customers. So we won several awards, just even doing the fundamentals of how we responded in the cost of living. So we won an award for how we responded to our customers and created that transparency and integrity. And then we tried to create real innovative product areas, which again, we've been recognized and won awards for. And going back to what I said in my opening, that's a very difficult thing to do in this space. So to make people care about energy, and then to be able to get them to engage, and then to be able to create experiences that are innovative and that actually improve the experience of customers, that mixture is a very difficult thing to do. And I think the backbone of it is culture and mindset.
Yeah, that's super helpful context. I think, it's hard to enact change in any space, but in energy, it's probably even more so, right? You have the regulation, you have just a fundamental constraint that a lot of companies provide what to customers appears like the same service at the very basic level. What are some things that like people don't know about this market that impact how you approach customer experience?
Well, regulation, as you mentioned, is probably the big one, and it's important. I mean, sometimes regulation can hinder innovation, but it's there for a reason. So you've got to understand, appreciate, and then navigate around it. There's also certain things that we can't do in our space that other companies or other industries can do. The first thing is, again, going back to we are energy. People don't necessarily want to engage. They engage out of necessity. And usually that's once a month when they've received their bill. So it's not like we have an endless opportunities or endless touch points such as, retail or other industries to constantly engage customers. We have one shot every month, if that, right? And that makes that one touch point the most important touch point for a customer, because that's what they're engaging with us for, to view what their bill is and how much they're being charged. So we've tried to really build and trigger our experiences on the back of that, because all of our demand or what customers would complain about, or even what they would be satisfied with, largely boils down to that bill. And usually it's price. So if you're charging them less and you could have a horrible experience around it, generally they'll be satisfied, right? It's making sure there's certain things we can't change. So obviously with Ofgem and the price cap, not always we can actually, do much on the price, small margins that we can differentiate on. But how do we show the value of everything else? So one of the things that did come out the cost of living was that people, customers, media, government, there was a lot more emphasis on energy. Sometimes in a negative manner. But again, I think it's then up to us, how do we react to it? And we decided to use those opportunities to create more transparency, more trust, more credibility with our customers, but also start to become more of a partner. So we're shifting from a basic utility company where we're just supplying energy and charging them a bill, to becoming more personalized, to becoming more service-based, to becoming more helpful for the customers. How can we use that bill, that's their kind of single source of truth and the one touch point that they have with us, and use that to open up a whole world of new opportunities that we have behind the scenes. But normally customers wouldn't engage there because they just want to see their bill. So we use the bill, and that's the mindset that they're in when they view the bill is, look, how can I reduce my bill? And then we show them opportunities and ways that they can reduce their bill, which creates further engagement, which creates further kind of stickiness. That's when you start, introducing incentives or gamification, personalization, and all of those nature. But it starts off with that one trigger point, which is, here's the bill, and now can you capture their attention to do more? And I think the tricky bit there is dispelling the narrative that usually customers have about energy companies, and they're not in it for them; they're in it for the companies and shareholders and bonuses. It's how do you kind of flip that narrative and say, look, we're here to support you and guide you, and actually we're here to reduce your energy and reduce your usage, because it's not about profit. It's about, can we give you a reliable service and a reliable supply, and then you'll stick with us. And if you stick with us, that's a success for us. Not can we make a quick, run on your energy bill and then, you're gone the next year.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming it does affect profit positively in the long term,
of course,
which is why you can do these things. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I find this absolutely fascinating. And have you done any work to estimate if these improvements, this focus on customer experience, like prioritizing long-term impact over those short-term gains, how they drive these kind of important KPIs for the business, the revenue, the profit, any of this side of things?
I think the first thing I'll say is social proof, we all know, is highly impactful.
Word of mouth.
Anytime anyone wants to buy something, they'll always look at reviews, ratings, recommendations. So driving a really good and consistent customer experience that then other people can vouch for will help in buying decisions. So that's number one. The second thing that we see is 70% of our customers who end up leaving us have one thing in common, which is in the 3 months leading up to them departing, they stopped engaging. And that shows actually when you have either a poor experience or an experience that's not engaging enough, or an experience that's not activated, you will lose business, you will lose customers. And I think that really just hits home in terms of how important creating that customer experience, both in terms of reputation, social reviews, and social proof, but also just the engagement with customers,
right,
to make sure that they're still with you, how important that is. And that, again, it's not an immediate payoff that you see on the books. It's not a direct thing that you see, but it is the whole picture.
Amazing. So yeah, it's not even enough to just for people to be neutral, right? You need them to be actually a fan of the energy company, which is a tall ask, right? Amazing, awesome. So Abdul, that's incredible background. So let's go into specifics. Can you tell us about something peculiar that you've discovered on this journey about E.ON customers and what made it memorable?
So one of the big successes we found when it comes to insight and then understanding what that is and then leading to a solution is you see, again, it comes down to the bill. So that's where everything starts. Customers usually will call and complain about the bill. And when you see that volume of complaints or demand or calls coming in, either to clarify the bill, or customers feel like they're being charged too much, or to complain about it, it can be very difficult because of the noise to figure out how do you actually fix this, when 9 times out of 10, we can't really do much about the price, especially in the price cap world. Not much we can do about that. And it becomes difficult or it becomes easy rather just to kind of settle on that base and say, well, we can't do anything in the price. People are complaining, it's out of our hands. Or you can start digging in deeper and really trying to understand, look, what is it that, is really causing and triggering that concern for customers. And one of the things we see early on is that smart meters, in the world of smart meters, which, a majority of our customers have, that also becomes, number 2 on the list. If you think about the 2 things that customers are really concerned about, it's the bill and the smart meter. And the smart meter is quite interestingly linked to the complaints that come in for the bill. Because usually when a smart meter disconnects, you're then not being able to get an accurate bill. You get an estimated bill, and then that can fluctuate. So when customers sort of call in or complain about their bill being too high, the root cause is actually their smart meter. Now, again, that's things that, usually in the industry, a lot of people know by now. It's kind of, common knowledge, but customers don't know about it. And I think this is where the difficulty is. How can you sort of identify that and get that information to customers and really explain that information to them? what we see on our bill and on our website and our digital touchpoints, we do actually explain to customers why their bill is estimated. And it's usually due to a smart meter being disconnected. When we looked at the data, we saw only 10% of people are actually seeing that information. So again, it's easy to revert back to the mindset of can't do much about the price. Usually if it's an estimated bill, it's due to the smart meter being disconnected. That information's on the website, it's on the bill, right? You leave it there. But then when you dig into the data and you see actually not enough people are actually seeing it, then actually the fault is on our side. So we look at that data, we then improve it, we then make it more visible. And we introduced sort of an alert mechanism system. So when customers' smart meter is down, we'd give them alert. We'll call it like a account health check. And they'll be notified that their smart meter is disconnected. And not just disconnected, that in the interim of the smart meter being then replaced or repaired, they would then have to submit a meter read. Now that piece of knowledge was completely unaware to most customers. Because you get a smart meter and then you forget the world of submitting a meter read, because why would you? So majority of our customers are unaware that when your smart meter is down, you have to submit a meter read. So this functionality that we included based on this data and this insight saw about 75% increase of meter reads submitted from those customers, which again is a huge uplift. And that means it's not just an action that we've unlocked. It means that 75% of customers are now getting, overcoming the estimated billing, are then preventing themselves from going into debt. And again, nothing's changed in terms of their price, but their experience and their sentiments towards the bill and us as an organization is just marginally improved. And I think those are the things that we have to look at to kind of see, look, what's in our control to improve and change. But obviously it doesn't just stop there. You then start going deeper and deeper. And the next thing that we see is, so 75% of customers were actually, able to submit a meter read. The rest didn't know how to submit a meter read, because actually getting a meter read from a smart meter versus a traditional meter is actually quite difficult. And so we had to cater to those. But again, we would have never understood that was even a problem without having gone through this sort of root cause analysis. And then we introduced another tool, which then is a step-by-step guide, which takes those customers which have larger, fairly sort of complicated meters, step by step in terms of how to go and actually submit a meter read, which it was no surprise. You had a 90% uplift of those customers being able to then submit a meter read. So I think that's, just an example of how really looking at research and feedback and insights can take you from what is an apparent problem to really going back to the root cause and first principles and then trying to solve it from there. And in both of these areas, we saw improvements to experience, satisfaction, ratings without changing the price, which was the first complaint that customers complained about.
Right. No, I love this, because it's one of those things that once you learn about it, makes perfect sense, but you wouldn't necessarily think up front of it. Even, I guess, if you do work in the energy sector, it probably takes still a little bit of creativity to get to that. And I love that, there's no unsolvable problem. Sometimes you can't actually do anything about like the direct cause of complaint from the customer, but at the very least, you can talk about it with the customer. And we've seen that make a big difference at other companies as well as with E.ON. So yeah, that's an incredible story. And can you talk maybe like if we double click a little bit into how did you found this insight from the team, right? And it sounds like there were more than one insight. There were a series of things, right? How did the team know that like this is actually something they need to be working on, and then like how did it turn into an initiative that you talked about?
So I think it again comes back to some of the mindset of how we work. You never really know for sure that this is exactly what customers need resolving. And I think so we're always on the mindset of you have some data points, some research, some insights, indicate a problem. We have enough to go on to make a bet. And the best way to move forward is to get something in front of customers. True believer of that. I see a lot of companies doing, 5-6 months customer research programs or voice of customer programs. And, you're basing your whole strategy on a handful of customers usually. I'm very much a believer of voting by the wallet. So have enough there to kind of go out and co-create with your customers. So we use this S-curving mechanism where we would have enough and would come up with sort of an idea. It might be an MVP, it might be a prototype, and we go to market with sort of a beta set of customers. We learn, we iterate, we co-create with customers, and then we kind of scale and iterate as we go along. And sometimes that process can take, 6 months. Because, and that might sound like a long time, but that you've gone to market already quicker. And then you have almost like a 3, 4, 5, 6 month, depending on how complicated the product is, of maturing the product with your customers. Co-creating, ideating, introducing new features, and then learning, not only just getting the customers ready. The more you learn, the more you can get customers ready for this. You also get operationally ready. So the more we learn in terms of how we're supporting customers and the new information we get, we can also prepare the operation internally to support customers at scale. And I think this is relevant for the industry that we're in because we have seasonal trends. So actually launching products over sort of 4 to 6 month periods allows us to cover biases that might happen during certain periods. And why this is important, I'll tell you one insight that came out of one of our products, which is again, it was sort of a billing product that we launched. During that phase, we launched a product in, I think, sort of end of October. Launched a product, everything was fine, positive reactions, started to scale the customer base. Towards the end of November, December, we started getting a lot of feedback from customers saying they want the prominence of the PDF download button on the bill. So we have an interactive bill, customers view the bill, and then they can download the PDF version. During user testing, customer research, no one really was crying or shouting about the PDF button being like the number one thing. But during this live kind of iteration with customers where they're using it in real environments and real scenarios, suddenly during the November, December time and in early Jan, we started seeing a lot of people talking about, can you get the PDF button higher? And you dig into it a little bit more. Now, there's a couple of things going on here. For businesses or self-employed people, will be familiar with January 31st and how important that day is for self-assessment and tax returns. It's something about the new year, new goals, new me, and people wanting to move houses and mortgages, etc. So several life events and milestones were happening at that period for customers where they required a downloadable version of their bill for proof of address, mortgage applications, etc. That insight you can never get in customer testing because nobody's thinking about, right, I'm viewing my bill. When I apply for a mortgage, which is a once, twice in a lifetime event, I'm going to need this button higher up. It just never happens. So having this view of getting to market quick with the insights and research and data that you have, which is you need to have strong foundations of that, being able to test with customers, real environments, real scenarios, that for me is a much better way of iterating, launching, and then scaling a product.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. At Chatterman, we often talk about how you can't learn everything by asking questions. Sometimes you just need to listen to what actually matters for the customers, and you can't expect every little thing that will go wrong in this, such as a PDF button. Awesome. And Abdul, what is it about the structure of your team at E.ON, or how different teams work together maybe, that allows you to do these things so quickly? Because, I know you said 6 months is slow, but I think for a company serving millions of customers in a regulated market, it actually is incredibly quick.
Yeah. And I think, although I said that on the onset of 6 months might sound a long time, but we're launching products and iterations and versions in those 6 months, multiple products. And I think what really kind of allows us to do this is, number one, the customer-centric mindset. So really reprogramming your brain to understand the purpose and the why you're doing what you're doing, which isn't to fulfill a process. It isn't for vanity. It's to solve customer problems. And when customers need problem solving, they need it solving yesterday. So it's not really good enough for us to sort of sit on solutions for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and then launch it to the customer. A, you probably lost a window of opportunity, but B, you've probably overanalyzed and over-processed something that works for you, and the customer probably only needed 10% of that 6 months ago. So we're very much of the believer of marginal gains. We're very much of the believer of, if you look at an engineering mechanism, we start sprints to deliver something of value by the end of it, not to kind of just go through endless backlogs. And that means that we're here and our sole focus is to serve customers. We know they've got a problem. We'll release and build something for them. If that improves their experience today, 1% more than it was yesterday, release, ship, iterate, and then continue. So that's the first thing, is that mindset, reprogramming as to why you're here. The second thing is mechanisms, processes, structures, right? We're set up in a way where we have, in my function, we have everything that you need to deliver customer experiences. So we have the insights, the research, the journey managers, the product managers, the designers, the engineers, the analysts, the testers, everything in under one roof, which means that we're always connected to the customer, right? Because we're focusing on customer insights and research and feedback and using that as a loop to then drive and deliver what we build. And that's throughout. There's no handoffs, right? So usually you see like a customer research team, They do the research, then they hand off to the design team, who then hand over to maybe the product, then the delivery team, who then hand over to engineers. That's like 4 or 5 steps removed from the customer data.
Not only is it removed, but also sometimes those other teams have their own agenda and they come to the debate with the customer experience team. And more often than not, they win.
Yeah, and the setup allows us to be super close to the customer insight, but it also means we have one agenda, which is customer experience.
That's amazing. I absolutely love it. And for those of our listeners who maybe are starting on this journey and want to turn their organization onto this path, like, what do you think? What are the steps for them to take to achieve this?
I think there's we could go strategic and tactical. And I think from a tactical perspective, you need a strong foundation. That's from a technology perspective. You have to have a strong structure and foundation that then enables you to be customer centric. So that means data, that means insight, and that means the capability to deliver, whether it's personalization or automation or even AI. You need all of those core fundamentals in there. And usually, if you can create omni-channel from the get-go, even better, because a lot of times, the simplest things of different systems talking to different languages can cause havoc. So that I think is important from an enabler perspective, like being really tactical. Then you have to have the mindset, and that sometimes is top down. But even if it's not top down, how can you create a bottom up structure that influences, your top senior C-suite leaders, and that can sometimes be by proof points. So if you can show proof points of, for example, some of the insights that I mentioned earlier on, which is it's beyond the obvious and it's done at speed. So obviously we use several different tools and capabilities that allows us to, really deep dive into research instantly. And that's research at volume and scale, not talking to 5 customers or a focus group. They all have their merits. But being able to show that there's a different way and a different sense of approaching customer experience, and seeing those quick wins and goals, I think is important. So if you're fortunate enough to have top-down sponsorship, fantastic. Build the capabilities to allow you to progress. Otherwise, I think it's about finding those proof points and how can you kind of leverage those insights and make, executives and board members sit up and say, wow, that's an insight that I never knew.
Well, that's literally why we created this show, to spread these proof points and inspire people to do a little bit more. Awesome. Abdul, maybe to shift gears a little bit, we have a quick fire round prepared for you. So I'm going to ask you a question. Feel free to just say whatever comes to mind. Could be short, could be a bit longer. So what's one trend you see in customer experience that's overhyped?
I will say, we touched upon it earlier, but I will say the default of starting and finishing with whether that's surveys or customer testing with like 5 people, 10 people, or focus groups, these are good trigger points for further deep dives. But I think when you start and finish your voice of customer program with these items and then wrap it around and say that's your voice of customer, and then build your strategies based on opinions from a very limited set of people giving in a very biased environment, I think can be problematic. And I think that's when you lose the endorsement from senior leaders. When you package that up and you spend several months, trying to understand what the mind of 5 people in a very biased environment say about your product, I think becomes very difficult for senior execs to buy into.
Yeah. I completely see it. And I think a lot of people do it because they don't have an alternative, but it's not actually the right answer. Okay. And what is a brand that you think is absolutely nailing customer experience? Like who do you look up to as inspirations?
I think it's personal preference in all of this, but for many years I was a big fan of Monzo. I just liked the whole flashy orange card that they went out with, and it was connecting they were a digital first company, so you physically couldn't open up a bank without the app, but then they were really connecting the real world with the card. I remember those early days when you had to be on a wait list and you'd go in the supermarket and you'd pay and someone would say, "Hey, are you a Monzo customer?" Who would have thought that would happen for a banking card? So I think early days of Monzo were really inspirational. I'm a big fan of Airbnb right now. Just the minimalist approach, the simplicity. There's just something about that experience that just really kind of talks to me a lot. I think I look for how a company talks to me. And I think what Airbnb try and do a lot more is use very common language that, is relevant to you. And I just right now, that's a trend that I'm quite big into.
That's definitely one customer experience focused company. We absolutely love Chatham. We use that 11-star framework that they talk about a lot to inspire each other. Awesome. And last one, what is one thing you wish more executives understood about customer experience?
I think the payoff. And what I mean by that is in very results-driven, finance-driven organizations, they'd want to see that immediate payoff. And sometimes customer experience, it's not a tangible, you do this and you see this. Sometimes it is, but not always. And I think it's about looking at the bigger picture and what do you want to stand for? And sometimes it takes time to build ratings and reviews and recommendations. It takes time. And those are not immediate payoffs, but they will hold you in good stead for the long run. And it's about companies trying to understand what do you want to build and what do you want to stand for. Is it a immediate kind of cash flow, which will mean that you target customers who are very much motivated by price? And so in our industry, that would mean, you just lower the price and customers will come, and then the following year, they'll just pick someone else depending on the price. So you can't hedge your bets on those. Or do you take the slightly longer route round, which is really investing in your brand experience, your customer experience, and your longevity, and really use that as a target point for customers? Because, as you said earlier, you do those things and activities, of course, the revenue, the cash flow, those will be constant. So I think it's if there is a struggle at executive level, it's trying to see beyond the immediate payoff and really believe that sometimes it can take a while, but you're investing in the long run.
That's amazing. That's so inspirational. Abdul, it's such a great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us, for being our first guest on How to Love a Customer. Thank you.